And put the coolant passage back in its place. I actually have this pinched off right now, like clamped. That way I can put this hose at the same time. Just makes it easier if I do it like that. So I just got done checking the valve adjustment on the intake and exhaust side, and it checked out good. It's within the proper specification. So I'm going to go ahead and install the valve cover back on. I've already cleaned the surface up, and I just got to go ahead and put a dab of silicone right there and right there, this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, and right there and right there. Then I can put the valve cover on top and put new grommets for that go right here and tighten it up. I'm also going to go ahead and add some more oil on top of the cam lobes. That way on initial startup it doesn't start up dry, even though there is a little bit of oil already on there, but just want to go ahead and add some more. And just like I did for the oil pan, I'm going to continue to use this Honda Bond tube. These are the new grommets that I'm putting in. Came with the valve cover gasket. So apparently these grommets have a marking. This is an aftermarket one. The OEM one's a little bit better to see, but that's the little mark right there, and this faces towards the front of the engine. So like this. So with the marking like laid out like this, that's how I got all four. And then I'm gonna go ahead and torque this to 17 foot-pounds. So these nuts right here are, you use a 30mm socket. It did take several passes to achieve the final torque, and obviously I had to start from the middle, work my way outside, and every time the torque wrench would still slightly move after doing 1, 2, 3, 4, but eventually there's a point where it's finally torqued down to 17 foot-pounds, and then the torque wrench no longer moves, and it beeps at you or clicks at you depending on the style torque wrench you're using, indicating that you're good. So these are torqued down and ready to move to the next thing. I'm gonna go ahead and get the exhaust manifold installed. I've got a new exhaust manifold gasket, so I'm gonna go ahead and put the exhaust manifold on. I'm gonna go ahead and get this exhaust manifold tied into 36 foot-pounds. These two lower bolts right here are torqued down to 31 foot-pounds. I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this bracket it pretty much holds the wires for the distributor. So it goes on there like this. So I'm getting ready to put the fuel rail on my engine, but before I do that I wanted to go ahead and replace the grommets and the O-ring. This one right here goes on this side, like so. And the part number for that one is this. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the O-ring that goes on there. Part number for that is this. Then the other grommet that goes on this side, part number is this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of lube on this O-ring and stick it in my fuel rail. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for the remaining 3 injectors. So I'm getting ready to install the fuel rail into where the injectors go, which is right there, and then these 2 bolts are for this and for this. I'm going to get my dry belt installed for the alternator. This is back portion one. And then to get rid of all this slack, just pull your alternator like that. I had all these bolts loose. I had this one loose, and this one loose. So to add more tension, I'm gonna have to tighten this one up, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and play with it, see when I find the proper tension for this dry belt. So I've tightened this bolt right here to what I believe has the proper tension, just going off of my hand. There's a special tool for it, but I don't have that, so I'm just going off by feel. If anything, it's probably more on the looser side, and being more on the looser side, you'll probably get a noise, like a chirping noise, but that's better than it being too tight and ruining potentially this bearing right here on the alternator. So once I turn it on, I'll see if I have a noise present or not, but I think it's good. Looks pretty good to me. Then I can go ahead and tighten this bolt up. And then I also had this bottom one loose, although it probably wasn't necessary, but I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that up. That's actually a 14. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the distributor. I got a new O-ring on here. I already got some oil on it. This right here has to line up with the markings right there on the camshaft. Pretty much the female version of this is the male, and there's like a female portion there. It just has to line up. So yeah, pretty much this in there. It has to line up with this right here. Approximately, it goes in this position right here. That's probably why they have that groove right there. So that's approximately how I can get this to line up in there. This is at top dead cylinder one is at top dead center, so that's like this, and this is like that. So I can go ahead and just get this in there. Now I can go ahead and this is how it has to look. It has to be closed. Pretty much this has to be in, touching all the way over here. This has to be touching. That's how it has to look. That's how you know it's seated. You don't want to go ahead and put this bolt in and it not be seated, because then you'll just ruin the distributor. So put this bolt in there and just kind of, I'm gonna put it like at the halfway point, and then later on when the car's running, I'll get a timing light and time the ignition timing. But for now, just around the center is gonna work. With the distributor installed, I can now put the bolts for the fuel rail, the actual remaining fuel lines. One goes on the cylinder head, and then the other one goes on the water passage. So one goes there, and then the other one goes right here. So I'm getting ready to install spark plugs. This is the original OEM part number. The gap that it needs to be at is 44 thousandths of an inch, or 1.1 millimeters. So I got feeler gauges to confirm that. It's when I stack these two, that gets me 44 thousandths of an inch. So I just stack them up, check my gap like this. And it goes in, and it's got a little bit of some resistance in there. So I already checked all 4 of them. I'm gonna go ahead and install them. So since the magnet on my spark plug socket is non-existent now, what I use is a rubber hose. I can't find the one that's a little bit bigger than this, but got this one and it actually works as well. Only thing is, it's just more of a tighter fit trying to get this on initially. So once I get that on, just bring it over here. And just twist your hose to get that tight on there. I know this hose is excessively long, but I just didn't want to cut it. So once you get a couple threads on there, that's enough to pull it out. Reason why you want to do this is because you don't want to just drop these spark plugs in there and potentially just mess up the gap that you just made on your spark plugs. So with the spark plugs installed, I can go ahead and put the spark plug wires. They all have their length that they go in. So farthest one goes over here to cylinder 1, and the shortest one goes over here to cylinder 4. So I've gone ahead and put the motor mount bracket on. It's 3 bolts here on the block, this length, and then there's a short one right here that goes on this bracket for the engine hook, which is a smaller one. The smaller one goes right here. So before I can put the intake manifold back on, I had to get this wire harness started. By started, I mean the fuel injector connectors had to get plugged in, because that goes, the intake manifold goes over it, so you won't be able to afterwards. So went ahead and did that, and might start plugging other stuff in, or I might put the intake manifold on first. I haven't decided, so we'll see. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and get this intake manifold installed. This portion of the harness right here runs through here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. This pipe right here was what was fighting me. So honestly, if I had this pipe removed from here, it probably would have been so much smoother to get that intake manifold on. But just had to maneuver that, and then as well as maneuver the harness. I've got the harness tab that goes on the intake manifold plugged in. It's right there. That just holds the harness in place. So I got that side plugged in. Then I got this side plugged in. So I've got all the intake manifold bolts and nuts on there. I'm gonna go ahead and snug them up, then tighten them up. So there's that nut right there. One nut on the right side, another nut on the left side right there, and then the remaining ones are bolts. 2 there, 2 there, and 2 there. The torque specification for the intake manifold is 14 foot-pounds. I'm gonna snap this wiring harness back in its place. Then I'm gonna put this vacuum deal right here. This ground goes right here. I'm actually gonna probably clean this up a little bit. I don't like how it's got oil on it. Got this connector right here. Connector for the alternator. This wire here for the alternator as well. This connector right here for this vacuum deal. So this deal right here, there's a little vacuum hose, goes right here. This portion of the harness goes right here on the back of the upper timing cover, like so. What I did was I loosened these bolts up, and now I can go ahead and tighten it back up. This connector that you find right here goes right here. So this coolant hose right here goes right here. Got it pitched off, that way I can just slide it easier. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the distributor wire in the harness portion. This one looks like it goes right here, but it doesn't. It's actually this one, because this one goes over here. So I've got 3 vacuum hoses here. These 2 over here are gonna go over to the water outlet over there. So I'm gonna just put this here, put this behind this wiring harness, and just push it through like this. I made a white mark and then I made a white mark right there. That way I could remember that that white mark goes there, and that the one that doesn't have the white mark, well, goes in the one that doesn't have the white mark. I've got this other coolant hose here from the throttle body. The length corresponds with this one right here. So I'm just going to slide it on there. I'm going to get this brace installed. Pretty much just supports the intake manifold. One side goes on the block, other side goes on the intake manifold. I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up this EGR pipe. It's a 24 millimeter wrench is what I'm using. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. I got the majority of the components installed back on this engine. What I lack is the heat shield for here for the exhaust manifold, but I just have to get some bolts have to get some new bolts because the old ones had shrunken due to rust, so I need to get some new bolts. And then I gotta go take this off the engine stand, put the plate that goes on here, put the flywheel over the plate, then I can mate this up to the transmission. And there's actually part of the harness I can't put back on quite yet because it goes over. See, like this one right here goes over. I believe it goes like, yeah, it goes on top of the transmission and then the bolt goes through here. So that's why a portion of this harness I have not connected yet. But I'm just gonna wrap it up there. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys found the video helpful, please go ahead and give me a like. If you want to leave any feedback or have any questions, please leave a comment. And if you're liking my content so far, consider subscribing. Thank you. You guys have a good one.